In 2025, this past year, roughly 10,000 reservations up for 3 to 6 night stays, and 7 night stays were roughly down about 9,000 bookings in our market. So there's certainly been a huge shift. Our average daily rate is staying higher than it has been still, so still getting that higher dollar, but just adjusting to the mentality and perspective of flex stays being as profitable as a 7 night stay. The goal is to get 2 3-night stays in a week or a 3 and a 4-night stay, and you're at least 120% of a weekly rate.
Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. This is your essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business with advice and insights from the best in the biz. I'm your host, Lynell Gordon. Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. I'm Lynell Gordon, your host, and we have a really special guest today that has some information that I think is incredibly important in the industry. Tiffany Moldovan, who is with Beach Realty. She manages about 450 properties, more or less, depending on the time of year. And she is the director of property management.
Yes.
She is the one in charge of property management. That's where we go on that. So Tiffany is going to talk to us today about changes in the industry that are really remarkable and unique. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So the Outer Banks has always been like this area that's untouched by other markets. In other words, the trends that happen in other areas where we don't have a lot of repeat visitors in some areas, or we're dependent on OTAs, or they have markets that are short stays. Our market in the Outer Banks of North Carolina has always been very stable. 7 days rentals. They love to come on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, that has changed over the last years, and come for 7 days. And that market has been incredibly stable with the same people bringing their families back, like grandparents.
Generational stays.
Totally generational stays. It's been a unique market, but there have been some changes recently.
Yeah.
Tell me about those changes.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in the industry since 2012, so for quite some time. And one of the biggest trends and shifts that I've seen in the market has certainly come after COVID. It has been the request for shorter stays. And our market, as you stated, was traditionally 7-night stays, Saturday, Sunday to Sunday. Most of our owners have operated under that traditional standard. So it's been a little bit of a shift to get owners on board to see what trends and shifts have been made for our market. As far as demand goes, 3 to 6 nights has seen a huge incline since 2023. So just in 2025, this past year, roughly 10,000 reservations up for 3 to 6 night stays, and 7 night stays were roughly down about 9,000 bookings in our market. So there's certainly been a huge shift. Our average daily rate is staying higher than it has been still, so still getting that higher dollar, but just adjusting to the mentality and perspective of flex stays being as profitable as a 7-night stay.
Are you automating those through software, or are you doing those manually as far as pricing for those stays?
Yep. So we do use the software. We do take advantage of length of stay pricing. So depending on the number of nights in which the guest is staying, the nightly rate is inflated by a percentage so that the owner is never essentially getting less than 60% of a weekly rate on a 3-night stay.
Okay.
And so, of course, the goal is to get 2 3-night stays in a week or a 3 and a 4-night stay, and you're at least 120% of a weekly rate. So once you get owners that have tried it and see it, then they're all about it. But it's just kind of getting that mental shift to happen, I think, across the board.
So I have a question. I know this is kind of outside the scope, but here's the question. We knew that people were telling us the demand is there for this. The demand is there for this. Number one, it was really hard for us to shift our mindset from a 7-day stay and figure out how we were going to make the same amount of money for the owner with those 3 to 6 night stays. So was it really the software that allowed us to meet the demands of the traveler, or was it the traveler came in and we decided that we would meet the demands of it regardless of the software?
So I would say it was the traveler that came in. We were manually doing things before software was able to, I think, replicate what was being done. We started offering shorter stays, 3-night stays back in 2018, 2019. So we were manually doing it at that time and manually inflating, I guess you can say, on the back end. But we were getting 100% of a weekly rate for 3-night stays. You know, people want the flexibility. Not everybody can travel 7 nights. I know it's a generational thing too. Our generation tends to book in a shorter booking window. They tend to want shorter stays, Friday to Monday or Tuesday. That's what accommodates your work schedule. And so I think that's been a huge change or contributor to the change is that generation change, I guess. My generation trying to travel shorter stays.
You're also on the tourism board, right?
Local board of directors, yes, for the Outer Banks. So Outer Banks Association of Realtors, yes.
So tell me about that. What are you guys seeing there? What kind of trending?
Well, so we see things on a bigger level scale, of course. Property management is such a small portion of the Outer Banks real estate market. But I mean, we've seen a lot recently with the homes in Rodanthe collapsing and how to address those kinds of issues. But as far as overall as a market, we've seen a lot of stabilization. Homes are certainly staying on the market longer than they were 2 or 3 years ago during, the COVID boom. But we're not really facing too many, I don't want to say, knock on wood, trials and tribulations at this point. It's been pretty smooth sailing.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So for property managers who are looking to grow, when you look at the size of your company at Beach Realty, it's much larger than the average property management company in the U.S. So when you first started there, how many properties did you guys have?
We've kept around the same number. I want to say we've gone between 400 and 480 since I've been there. So we've seen the fluctuation. That is a common thing in our market. Homes circulate through property management companies left and right. There are so many of us that have so many great company offerings and things like that. So you do see homes that transition, but we've always fluctuated between 400 and 480.
Tell me the issues that you see with maintaining and keeping your homeowners in a market that is incredibly competitive. You have one of the most competitive markets in the area. Think about it this way, guys. The average property management size is about 75 in the U.S. And they are 5 times, right? More or less that, depending on where they are. And they are not an incredibly large company for their area. So they're like maybe...
We're mid-size.
Yeah, you're mid-size in that area. So you think about the fact that you have to maintain those many homeowners. Tell me, what kind of things do you do to keep your homeowners?
So, I mean, it is a challenge for us, but it's a challenge across the board. So we deal with the same population pool of cleaners and vendors and things of that nature. So I wouldn't say going from one property management company to another that there's really much of a change because we're all pulling from the same pool of cleaners and vendors, right? So what makes us stand out is I feel like we have a dedicated rental manager for each property owner. So we don't just have a division that oversees all. So every property owner has their own dedicated rental manager that they can go to for any issues that come up. And then, of course, that property manager is responsible for getting with the different departments and solving whatever needs to be solved and getting back to that owner. So it really streamlines communication. It makes the owners feel like they have that dedicated person that's going to help them. They don't have to call 500 people to get an answer. And so I think that's one of the things that helps us stand out. We market on all OTA sites. I know a lot of companies have viewed it as competition in the past. Not saying the idea hasn't crossed our mind because it is competition, but at the same time, if you can't beat them, join them. And the exposure that you get from being on those sites has certainly helped us grow as a company. So I would say that's been a huge thing. There are some companies in our market that are not on OTAs yet. So I'd say that's one of the other things that help us stand out and make owners profitable, capitalize.
Can you guys imagine a market where you don't use OTAs at all? Now, I can because I'm from North Carolina. So knowing that there are competitors that you have that aren't even using OTAs, that tells you about the return rate that they have in that area. What kind of return rate do you have for Beach?
Honestly, I feel like that has decreased over the years. And it's not necessarily that it's a generational thing. I think people move on to bigger houses too, right? That, your families grow and you move on. But we're probably around an 8 to 9%, I would say, repeat renter, come to the same house every year, dedicated to that house type of guest. Everybody else is new. They're new travelers. Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to property managers that are looking to grow their company?
Get creative, be flexible, really study your local market and what others are doing to be successful, and don't be afraid to make change. The only thing constant in life is change, and you got to be able to adapt. And like I said, get creative to stay on top.
It's scary to change.
It is.
I mean, it is. And a lot of times it's also, there's training that we have to consider for our staff, and that's scary too. Tell me how you would characterize Beach as opposed to your competitors? How do you stand out other than the fact that you're doing it? I mean, the OTAs is really big there, but how do you stand out in a market where it's so competitive?
It is. It's really hard. Like I said, from the guest standpoint, we do our best to get every issue resolved within 24 hours. Of course, that's something that most property management companies are out there promising as well. We're at the mercy of vendors and all of those things. But I mean, we really do put the guest forward, the guest experience forward. Our communication is probably the best part, I would say. We don't let guests just simmer, right? We want to get in communication and resolve issues. Repeat renter discounts, honoring those repeat renters. Our software allows us to kind of document who is a repeat renter. And so we can target email those guests and make them feel a little bit more special for returning year after year and things like that. So marketing is a big part of capturing, I guess, and turning the OTA guest into a direct booking.
Okay, that's a huge problem that many markets, a lot of Hawaii struggle with that. A lot of my clients that are there have struggled with that in the past. There are software ways to get around that.
Yeah.
How do you get around that? How do you turn them into direct bookings?
Well, and so a big thing is selling them on the price difference. So booking direct, you're always going to pay, of course, the lowest rate. And so while they're in-house, target marketing that through SMS and email. Please keep in mind, like when you're on vacation, how many emails do you really read, right? And so SMS, they're already paying attention to text messages coming from you because they're on vacation. And so targeting that, allowing them a window to book before they depart. So giving them kind of like, you have till 12 p.m. to book on the day of checkout for a special discount. Things like that certainly have helped us turn that page from a booking that originally came from an OTA and then having them book direct for the following year.
I love that. That's a great technique. A lot of people use that where they give them like the deadline. I love that because you've got a call to action, you've got a deadline.
Urgency.
Yeah, it's a marketing win-win for that.
And then deposits, right? So you're just coming off vacation, right? You don't want to make them put 50% up front or, a high dollar amount up front. And so working with those guests as well on the amount of money they have to put down up front in order to book next year is another, I think, key factor.
This episode of the Vacation Rental Show is sponsored by LSI Tools. With 22 customized tools designed for property managers, LSI Tools is here to supplement your vacation rental software. Our new LSI Rental Insights tool is perfect for easily searching through vast portfolios of guest information to change the way you do business. Visit us online at LSI Tools to learn more. Let me ask you this, talking about the amount of money that you have to put down in order to book, is that a revenue stream for you that you keep 100% that doesn't go toward that? Do you just like say, okay, for $100, you can reserve this house for next year?
So we do not. That has been a method in the past, especially in our market where you put $125 down and you've put a hold on a property. We are taking bookings 365 days out, so year round. And so when you book with us, anything that you do pay is applied towards the booking total. So typically we're asking for 25% for renters that are booking right after their stay versus the standard 50 that you'd pay if you booked outside of that.
Oh gosh, those are two different methods to get return bookings. And I guess you're finding the latter more successful than the former.
I would say, 100%. I think that
it's more money down.
Well, right. So it is more money down, but it is locking them in. What you have found in the past is they pay this $125 and they don't really care about the $125. But now that week has been off the market for 3 or 4 months. And so by the time it gets back into the market, you've already missed this primary booking window. You have no money on the books, and that owner's at a disadvantage. And so we made that shift to lock in reservations at the time of booking, like I said, 1 year out. So that way the owner's protected if they do want to cancel, that there's some money on the books and it hasn't just been sitting out there.
And the money goes to
the owner.
Oh,
it's the rent. Yeah. We have a processing fee. Don't get me wrong. Right. And so depending on the situation, in the Outer Banks, we require guests to pay in full before you can cancel. And so if the week rebooks, the guest is entitled to a refund. If it doesn't, then they're not. But in that process, we're capturing a processing fee. So any rents, though paid, if a guest were to cancel, certainly go right to the owner.
Tell us how the Outer Banks is different than other markets, because maybe there are people that don't know.
So the Outer Banks is very close-knit. It's very local oriented. You don't have a ton of buildup. We are an island.
Actually, an island.
An actual island.
And how far is that? I mean, how far are you off the mainland?
So there's some mainland about 15 miles in either direction when you're in the center. So Kill Devil Hills, I look at as like the center between Hatteras and Corova. There's mainland about 15 miles each direction. But the island itself, certainly there's two roads. There's a main highway and there's a beach road. So traffic can be crazy, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. Another reason to go flex, avoid the traffic. So,
oh, that's a really good reason.
Yeah.
That is because the traffic can be quite significant.
People wait hours to get to Corolla, hours. So we're operating with limited residents, right? We have a very small, like I said, population and pool of people that we're pulling staff from and workers from. And so I think it does make us a little unique. And year round, we have constant tourists.
I want to give you guys an idea of how remote the Outer Banks is. So how long does it take for you to get an Amazon package?
It's not the same day delivery, and we're lucky if we're getting 2 or 3 day delivery. But they've gotten a little bit better. I would say probably 3 or 4 days before you get Amazon.
I have a friend who lives in Hatteras, and he's like, it still takes me a week.
A Hatteras is a little bit different, I would say, for sure. It takes longer. And 4x4 area, of course, Corova Beach.
Yeah.
That is another desolate area. Talk about remote and yeah.
So think about, guys, where you live, and imagine if it took you 3 or 4 days minimum to get it and a week as a regular thing. So they are very remote. See, this is truly an area for tourists that come who want to be kind of out of the way. And I know you guys have areas like that. Tell me what other advice or you were talking about some stats, and I don't know what the stats were, so surprise me because I don't even know the question to ask.
So, no, I would say advice for property managers, like pay attention to booking trends year over year over year. And looking at stats, in 2023, we had roughly 47% of our bookings that were made more than 180 days out, for example, right? So where you're setting your higher rates or your inflation should be following your standard heavy booking windows. Whereas in this year, that's dropped down to 39%. And so more bookings are coming now in the 60 to 180 day window, these last minute bookings. So kind of shifting your marketing, shifting your inflations, your pricing based on those shifts in booking trends. So that's a huge thing. In 2025, it was 40% of our bookings were made within 60 to 180 days.
Okay. So think about how significant that is. You have gone from a booking window of 180 days out average. You've come all the way down to 60 to 90 days. Yeah. Holy cow. You must have thought that you were losing the whole season.
Correct. And that's how it has felt, especially for owners. Year over year over year, right? You're getting into February, March, and I still have all these weeks open, and we're sitting there and we're looking at the stats and we're saying, the average booking window isn't what it used to be, and you have to be patient.
Is that connected with a shorter stay?
Yes.
Okay, that's
shorter stays, 100%. Yep. And so owners that don't go flex, that are staying stagnant and staying 7 nights, they still had open weeks this past summer. But you saw those homes that were flex. I personally manage an investment homeowner. She has 40 properties that are in the Outer Banks that I oversee myself. And it's been a conversation we've been having for the last 2 or 3 years. And in February, she said, pull the trigger, just do it on every house. And she has everything from a 2-bedroom little oceanside cottage to a 12-bedroom oceanfront house, right? So her overall portfolio was down about 6% when we made that change. And we have not dropped since April. We've been up since April. And that's all flex stays because we've opened that flexibility. You got to think, like I said earlier, newer travelers don't know our market. They're not going on the websites and searching Saturday to Saturday and Sunday to Sunday. So these owners that don't want to shift, they're not even populating in search results because these guests are searching Thursday to Monday, right? And so if you're not available Thursday to Monday, you don't even populate in search results. So it's important to expand your homeowners' knowledge, provide them with the stats and the data, and try to build those trusting relationships so that way they entrust in you to capitalize on their investments.
That's a huge trust factor that property managers have to have in you in order to change that mindset. I mean, that's a huge change, Tiffany. How do you convince your homeowners, look, this is better for you?
Stats. You got to show them stats, right? Some owners just naturally have that trust in you. Like I said, I didn't necessarily have to show stats to the owner in February that made that shift, right? She has that trust in me, and we built that over years. But some owners want to see black and white. They need the visual. And so sending quarterly stats updates to your owners, putting them on your owner portal, and not just stats of their property, stats of the market. Let them see it visually, what the market is doing, I think is huge.
I agree. I see this trend, not just in the Outer Banks. The market that I grew up in is 5 hours away, but it's like 6 beaches down, in North Carolina. So I've seen the trend. I actually opened my personal house up for these stays because I'd been like, open it up for whatever. I don't care. Let's play with it. It's an oceanfront rental with great amenities. So, it's a really good rental, but I was just like, let's try it. And it was really funny because normally this is off season for us. And my mother went by. She was like, she had guests. She's like, I'm just going to go over to your porch and hang out on the ocean. And she went by. She was like, but Lynell, there were 3 cars there. So I didn't go. I said, really? There's no rental this week. And I went, oh my gosh. Last minute reservation, 4-day rental. And I'm like, here we're seeing in live the change in trends in traveler behavior. So looking at those and not expecting to see the same thing, but that window, the booking window.
As a homeowner, it's important in convincing your homeowners or talking with your homeowners, look at your year-end number. Don't pay so much attention to your per booking number. I know everybody has a minimum. I have to cover my expenses, right? And that's, of course, standard. But don't pay so much attention to the booking amount. Pay more attention to the year-end amount. And you want to see 3% profit green, each year. And so if you pay attention to that year-end number and stop focusing so much on the per booking number, it changes your perspective a little bit.
I 100% agree. I personally want to see at least $100,000 in profit. That's me.
Well, yeah, 3% year over year increase it's a goal. It's a standard, to see. Does it happen to everybody? No. But I see the owners that have made that shift that are soaring above that 3% profit gain year over year, looking at last year versus this year.
And I want to clarify that. I want to see $100,000 after all my expenses are paid.
Yes, right. You want to net that.
Yeah, I do want to net. And we do net that. We actually net more than that, which is great. But seeing the 3% year over year, that's really, I never thought about it. I haven't really looked year over year. I've just looked at the bottom line year over year. I haven't done a lot of statistical analysis on that. Now that you've said that, I'm going to go back and look.
Yeah, it makes it a challenge. It's fun. How can I get 3% above? And then you have a goal and you start marketing and targeting towards that goal.
For your property managers, you are assigning property managers to homeowners.
Correct.
How many can they manage for real?
My most experienced property manager right now has about 95. And then everybody else is scaling somewhere between 60 and 80.
Here's the lesson from that I'm looking at. You can have one person responsible for 60 properties. That means, guys, as you're growing, you can probably hire a property manager when you hit 60 properties, and they can really have a one-on-one touch with the homeowners.
So they have an assistant. I have a north zone and I have a south zone, essentially. My north zone has an assistant and my south zone has an assistant. So it's one assistant to 3 property managers, roughly.
Okay.
So they do help. And we have a dedicated homeowner line that they man. And so my assistants will be the ones picking up the phone anytime that homeowner line rings and directing to the appropriate property manager, et cetera. So they do have that assistance. But yes, they're managing 60 and could do more. It's just a matter of time management and really making sure that you have that open communication with the homeowners and somebody that is also handling the guests, because it can get overwhelming sometimes.
I'm sure. I just wondered, for people who have like 75 properties, how many property managers do they need for that type of business model where you're using one person to communicate with a property manager and handling all the issues? How many people do they need for that?
So I think the dynamic is big too. Are you talking about, a condo complex that you're managing with 30 doors, or are you talking about properties that span over 40 miles, right? And so one property manager spreading 40 miles would be next to impossible. So our zones are pretty much broken up within 15-mile increments. So my rental managers have a 15-mile zone. So I would say, depending on how concentrated you are, is a big factor. But I'd say one person starting out could do probably about 35 to 40 themselves, right? And then as they grow and get experience in dealing with guests and homeowners, they can expand. Another dynamic factor of that is you can have 30 doors and one owner, right? And in that case, you have one property manager dealing with one property owner, and the growth there is huge, right? Because that property manager should be able to handle more than one property owner. So I feel like that's another dynamic to consider is how many property owners are you dealing with versus how many units are you dealing with, and kind of segmenting your rental managers according to the number of property owners you have.
I love that. If there are people that want to reach out, if they have questions about the way that you guys are doing business and stuff,
I'd love to have conversation. I would love to have conversation.
So how would they reach you, Tiffany?
So you can definitely shoot me an email, Tiffany, Tiffany, at beachrealtync.com. I'm certainly open to any conversation, scheduling a call, a Zoom meeting, whatever, and helping. Competition is competition, but we all have to work together and help each other grow. So,
yeah, well, they probably won't be calling you from the Outer Banks, but they will be calling you from other areas.
Elsewhere, I open it 100%.
So, and I will tell you that she's very busy. I communicated with her personally. She is responsive, but she's crazy busy. So just get on a schedule and
I open it.
She lives by her schedule.
Yes, exactly. My Google Calendar. And I thank God for my assistant every day because Lord knows he's texted me this morning. He's like, you have a meeting today at 10. And I'm like, yes, thank you, God, thank you for reminding me.
I love that.
Yeah.
The assistants are great.
Yes.
Thank you for being with me.
Appreciate you having me.
I'm so happy. This episode of the Vacation Rental Show was brought to you by LSI Tools. To find out more about how LSI Tools can help grow your vacation rental business, visit lsitools.com. Make sure to watch for the Vacation Rental Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.